I'm Tamika Key. I am Deputy Managing Director of SIM, and I have two amazing panelists here with me today. So let's kick off a question that incorporates the intro. Tell us who you are, your role, and where your organization fits in terms of measuring user behavior in immersive environments. Zoe, we'll start with you.
So, hi, I'm Zoe Soon, Vice President of the Experience Center at the IAB. So I'm sure you all know the IAB. It's a trade organization that helps set the standards for digital advertising. We also do research, define best practices, help the industry with legal issues. And I sit in the Experience Center, which is all about helping brands future-proof. So we look at evolving, emerging advertising channels, gaming, XR, metaverse, and evolving consumer behaviors.
Olga.
There we go. Well, I'm sure you would have heard me without this anyway. But hi, everyone. My name's Olga. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Imperia. We are an immersive commerce platform, and we work with brands in entertainment, retail, fashion to help them create virtual stores that get integrated into their websites and traditional online channels to help drive consumer engagement, conversion rates, Gen Z new user acquisition. And we are very much powered by data. So everything that we do when it comes to immersive environments, and Tamika, if you want to flick the first slide on, just to get a bit of a visual of what we usually do. So these virtual environments that are powered by our platform are very much powered by data. So everything we do is tracked back into the consumer behavior and how we measure consumer behavior, both in a commercial sense, but also in a sense of how it translates to other channels.
So, Olga, what types of metrics can be gathered in an environment like this that Imperia creates for brands? Like, what are there specific metrics that brands are looking for?
So I would say that two metrics that we look at as absolute top priority is engagement time and conversion rate uplift compared to their traditional e-commerce channels and how people interact in the virtual environment. But that comes together with other metrics that are super specific to digital navigation mode, like say how much people interact with product and what's the click-through rate on the different products and how merchandising relates to this. And we can then translate this data into physical channels as well.
So are there details that you wish you could measure but don't have access to yet?
Great question. I would say we go quite deep on the consumer behavior. I think the one challenge when it comes to tracking is the correlation between personal data and impersonal data and how we're able to dissect the different user groups and personalize content for different user groups. So that's something that is very much yet to come.
And then how do you get this data to advertisers? Like, is it a dashboard? Is it an Excel spreadsheet? How do you get the data to them?
So with the retailers and the brands that we work with, they get access to a live data suite, so they can actually track. I think it's on the next slide if we want to have a visual. So this is pretty much what we're able to get in terms of this slide also has a video. We're able to get to the retailers so they can actually track in real time everything that happens within the virtual space, all the way from kind of high level traffic data to actual behavioral metrics to see how people navigate within the environment. Plus the kind of standard traditional reporting that we're able to provide.
And maybe one last question. Are you finding that the advertisers are wanting to bundle the metrics that you give them with other types of metrics? Like, oh, did this person watch my TV ad? Did this person interact on my non-immersive website? Are they combining them?
Yeah, so actually cross-channel tracking is really, really important here and bringing retargeting into this concept, because what we see, for example, is if the person interacts within a virtual environment and spends what we see on average is 11 minutes within a virtual environment, they are 3 to 5 times more likely to actually make a purchase within the next few weeks from the site, even if it doesn't result in a purchase straight away. So those are the types of metrics that is quite important to connect into a chain.
So shifting gears, so that's actually a lot. You can, for someone to say you may not be able to quantify the value of an immersive experience. There's actually a lot of things you can measure. Maybe it's not GRPs, right? But there's actually quite a bit of data that you can collect in that environment.
Absolutely. I think what we all saw last year was in metaverse as a concept in particular was a lack of data and struggles when it came to measuring and tracking in general. So this is what we as a company tried to solve within the environments that we are integrating into brand site.
I want to come back to that. But Zoe, so the IB helps set standards around all kinds of advertising. Where are we in terms of standards around measuring immersive experiences?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of tension points that we're trying to solve for, which is that it's the lifelong thing of people want comparability with old media, but you also need new media to be able to flex into its capabilities and not be retrofitting to old media. So I think for one, we're learning how to revalue like what is success in these environments, and before you to answer that before you can measure it. And on the practical side, where we're at is, we first in like 2020 came up with a framework for games and esports, sort of like taxonomy, so that we're calling things the same thing so that they can be measured the same way. And last year we updated the 2009 in-game measurement guidelines. They had 2000, they hadn't been updated since 2009. So that was before viewability was even invented a thing. So we defined viewability for in-game environments, and 3D environments, taking into account things like lighting, occlusion. If a sneaker is branded but the logo isn't in view, does that count as a view? Sort of all of those factors. Now we're working on AR measurement metrics. So looking at transparency and performance. Like, was my media delivered and how performant was it for me?
So, I mean, actually, I don't know if we can go back. We're just going to go to your slide. So are you, nope, we can go forward. So are you saying that
my slides are definitely not as cool as Olga's?
So are you saying that in a space like this, you're trying to create standards in terms of, did someone see that shoe, for example?
Well, what is an impression in an AR environment, right? So, and I think one of the issues is view through attribution, because it's views and clicks, right? That's
currency.
That's currency. But right now, if someone does a try-on, that counts as a view, but there's so much more intent behind a try-on. And there's so much, if you look at what people go on to do, conversions are great, like Shopify and Overstock, I think, was it Shopify and Wayfair, both saw a 200% increase in conversions when they introduced virtual try-ons. So we're not really valuing the try-on, right, in the correct way. So we're trying to address those things.
So I think you did have a slide, and we'll go.
Definitely not as exciting,
but it's important, right?
Yeah. So the first two are what we've done so far, and then the second two are what we're working on at the moment. The creative guidelines in gaming, that's about creative, but having consistent creative will also help with measurement. And then AR measurement guidelines.
So,
and I'll just say from the second project, you don't have to be an IAB member to participate. We've actually made it a task force so that anyone from the industry can participate.
So is the focus on gaming or VR and AR or some hybrid of all of the above?
I think they do all inform each other. We're looking at what exists and seeing what fits first so that we can have comparability where possible. We have started with gaming because there's a little bit more scale there. But we're eventually going to see these immersive environments inform more traditional digital formats. It sounds so weird to say traditional digital, doesn't it? But if you look at what's happening in CTV with green screens and dynamic product placements, they're going to have to fall back to these 3D environments where there is virtual product placement and how things are viewed. So
that was sort of what I think you answered this. But so how do you categorize the interactions in a storefront like Olga's? Are they in-game interactions? Are they e-commerce interactions? Are they immersive interactions? And like, where would a storefront like hers sit under the IAB kind of umbrella?
I would call that immersive because it's not necessarily a gaming environment. And commerce sort of sits across a bunch of us because there is there's a programmatic aspect to it, the retail media aspect. But in terms of if there is an AR or 3D object, that would sit under my department.
So it's kind of complex, right? And I would imagine if I'm a media buyer, how do I buy against a try-on, right?
I think the lines are super blurry, and actually to Zoe's point around virtual try-ons, to say we did a virtual try-on within Lululemon space, and what we saw, we didn't see the direct correlation with conversions because it's not always easy to track this and to trace direct paths, especially when it's part of a virtual environment that is part of a site and then leads to conversions. But what we did see is 89% of people that tried sneakers on shared it with their friends. So this type of shareability are the other things that I think media buyers track against as what are we trying to achieve? Are we looking at bringing new audiences? Is it important to share it with the new audiences to bring them back into the experience in this way? So yeah, those are the types of metrics we also look at.
So Olga, who comes to your team to get these storefronts built? Is it an innovation budget? Is it a metaverse team? Has that changed over time?
I'd say last year there was a lot of metaverse teams. I'm not sure what happened this year, but I think they all shifted back in teams or whatever before they were metaverse teams. But typically, like I guess the most common team we work with is e-commerce and people that look after a site. So that's usually e-commerce team. It spills into marketing budget. Sometimes there's two different budget lines that we tap into, both marketing and e-commerce. But typically, wherever we're looking after conversions and boosting that consumer engagement on site is the team we'd be working with.
And then Zoe, who participates in these? Like, who's participating in the AR measurement like group, or actually in your division? Who, like, what types of companies participate in the IAB Experience Center?
We get a range of platforms, publishers, agencies, brands, ad tech enablers. But for example, in the AR measurement guidelines, we've got Uber's in there. Obviously, Niantic, Snap, because they do Uber Eats, and I think they do some advertising. But yeah, the ones you would expect, so Niantic, Snap, Meta, Google, and we've got a few other brands that aren't coming to mind, but it sort of spans the gamut.
But and then maybe a little bit further, like who from their teams? Is it the innovation person? Is it or is it like clearly we don't have measurement people in this room? Is it the measurement people? Like who from the organization participates?
We do have like some head of measurements in there. We have some product and product developers because they want to build for what's going to get measured. We have some partnerships people because they know what their clients are asking for. So it really does range
across the board. So Olga brought this up a little bit, but what about data collection and privacy concerns in immersive environments? I guess the question is, just because something can be measured, just because you can, one of the things that was talked about early on, and I have not heard Meta say this in quite some time, but in the beginning with the Quest, Oculus Quest, but they said that you could actually measure, like you could track people's eyes, you could track like how they felt. Do you think we should track these things in immersive environments, and just because we can, should we?
I think we can, but it depends on, what I think would be wrong is to say that you, in particular, Tamika, looked at that chair for 30 seconds and then that chair would be brought up to you over and over with the company and Meta, in this case, having 100% clarity that this was you personally that have done that. And I think this is something that, in a sense, is against GDPR as well and other data protection regulations too. So as long as we can separate this data and depersonalize that, because what we're able to get to is a generalized user journey. So we're able to see where people are looking at or where exactly they're clicking and spending their time, but you would never be able to trace it back into who exactly is doing this. And I think that's the kind of important differentiation of data and keeping it as depersonalized as it is in traditional web, being able to tailor the content to the user.
Do you get any pressure from the buy side to give them sort of the very granular metrics?
I would say it kind of goes back to zero party data. and what we're able to track from a zero-party data perspective as well. I wouldn't say we get pressure from brands. There's always consistent interest as to, how far you can go, how much you can measure, and how much you can give them. But yeah, like I think everyone knows that there are limits to those things.
Zoe, is IAB working on any best practices in terms of privacy?
We haven't even worked out privacy for display. That's what's that way. I think there is a great level setting happening though, which is sort of opening up the space for us to think about these spaces more. Excuse me. I think we're cognizant of the landmines and the things that we will possibly need to regulate. There is so much data in these immersive environments, like you said, facial gestures, biometrics. There's so much more data. The question is like, who owns that data? If I scan my body for one store, should I be able to take it to a different store? Do I have to do that every time, which is going to be annoying? Where is the consent happening? So, oh God, do I know where my data is going and what I'm getting in exchange for it? Because I think when we enter this next phase of the internet, consumer sovereignty over the data is going to be really important. I think where we'll eventually end up is sort of having, data on the blockchain, and you sort of have a personal, a private mode, and then data on the blockchain that's available that you let people access.
As you just brought up an interesting concept though, right? Like if for a virtual try-on, right? I typically wear glasses sometimes, and Warby Parker lets me do my try-on. It'd be awesome if I could take that avatar to another place. But now we're asking for avatar interoperability and platforms to participate. And to your point, we can't even get that to happen in display. I guess we have 5 minutes. If anybody else has any questions, I have questions for days. But if anybody else has a question, turn it over to one of you. My question would be, what are you most excited about in the next 12 to 18 months in terms of both just immersive experiences in general, and then 2, in measuring in those experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm excited that we are moving towards this 3D internet. Like, we will one day be in the internet, and the line between physical and digital will just be much more seamless. We see AR glasses, recently Apple's headset. Apple sort of is that indicator that some new tech is about to go mainstream. So as these devices become less cumbersome and cloud computing improves, I think we'll just see more of these immersive experiences in our daily lives. So I'm excited about that. It's more natural to shop in virtual environments rather than the grid. Kids are more likely to socialize in virtual gaming environments than on a social feed. So I think I'm excited to see how we start to think about where we access consumers and what value we're providing.
Olga?
For me, it's definitely the Apple Vision Pro that I'm super excited about. And the same goes with Meta Quest 3, which kind of brings the same mixed reality concept into it, because I think with both virtual spaces and AR and kind of the way that we are going towards it, it needs to be a blend of the two. And I think they only originated as 2 completely different form factors of immersive content, just because devices and phones cannot really support the way that we would all envision interacting with AR and with virtual spaces and this true immersivity. So seeing devices brought to market that are actually consumer focused, and that, Apple has an incredible adoption curve for all those types of devices, regardless of how expensive or crazy they seem in the beginning. Like iPhones in 2007 were crazy expensive, or seemed crazy expensive as well. So that's something that I would hope happens, but we're also very, very excited. We're currently working on a product for Vision Pro, and bringing that interactivity and this kind of true form factor, meeting the hardware, is something that we're...
And is there anything coming down the pike that you think researchers and data analysts and measurement people should be focused on from an immersive standpoint? Is it the Vision Pro? Zoe, is it, should they be thinking about data interoperability in whichever environment there is? Like what would be a takeaway around sort of around immersion and immersive experiences?
Well, for me, it's a little bit less out there, but the amplification effects. I think Olga mentioned before, like if someone did a try and then shares it, that's sort of secondhand impression. So you're not just getting the value of someone interacting and engaging with your brand. there sort of being an organic ad, so that sort of intersects with the creator economy. If you see a 30-second ad and there's a QR code where you can learn more about a car, you scan it, that TV commercial now goes on maybe for an extra 4 minutes as the commercials, and someone's attention is on your AR ad, not on the CTV screen. So I think looking at how we're valuing and quantifying these secondhand impressions and experiences will be really interesting.
The secondhand impressions is interesting. Go ahead, Olga.
And I think the omni-channel aspect of it as well, like we live in such a connected world where we can check something, see an ad on Instagram, and then go into the brand app, and then switch into a VR device, and then go in store and check something on your mobile and regular e-commerce site while you are in store. So I think this cross-channel data is becoming so important in making those experiences more personalized.
Maybe I think my question would be, what do you think is preventing that data from being pulled in? Or rather, what do you think is preventing people from valuing those interactions in the same way that, I mean, it's probably blasphemy for me to say this here at our conference, right? But you said someone will do a try-on. Why is that try-on not worth, $30 a CPM as opposed to a CT, a video ad?
I think there's just been no benchmarking, because I think we don't know how to value it. And we can talk at a really philosophical level, but Susie Planner still has to go into her planning tools and show an outcome. And right now, when the economy isn't great, it's hard. People don't really want to take risks. It's hard to sort of, it's not really that easy to buy across.
And that's also why I think, Olga, there might be some success with your platform, because it's people understand and they know this. They know commerce, right? They understand that. They also understand AR on some levels. And so they're like, oh, this is shopping and AR. This is perfect, right?
It kind of fits in something we actually heard from one of the really big retailers we work with in the UK, is that when they integrate virtual try-on directly into their PDP or checkout pages, they see reduced conversion, but as part of an immersive experience, they see conversion going up like 3x, because people are already engaged with something and are in it to engage and discover the product, rather than to go on like a product page to add it straight to cart. So it becomes more of a distraction. So those types of things, I think the reason it's quite hard to track this is because also it tends to sit in disconnected teams. So whilst we would be working with e-commerce team, their data team would be looking at something completely different and matching all of this together. Their in-store team is also doing something completely different. So all those types of things become quite hard to match up and bring together.
I guess we're just not there yet. Maybe by this time next year, we'll have a little bit more integration. We'll have a little bit more access to the data. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me for this conversation.
Have a nice.
Thank you.